Okay, I think we are live now. The people online, a very good evening to all of you. Welcome to the high yielding topic series from Sunya IAS. Today we are going to cover one more topic, that is terms in news. So before I start, I just want to see how many people of you have joined in online. A very good evening. Okay, so again, those of you who are just seeing this for the first time, I just will try to tell you again that we have started with the HYT series, and you will find it for polity, for current affairs, for history, and now for environment. Okay, so there is a playlist you can go through. There's also dedicated link provided if you join the Telegram channel, so you'll get the updates for the high yielding topics. With 60 days to go, again 1 hour or so each day if you take out. These are topics which are curated in such a form that the 1 hour that you spend here will be a very good time investment. Now, yesterday what we had done was a topic, species in news, and that was the first part. Okay. Also, the mode of the session will be that I would want that the people who are watching this in the live mode here keep on mentioning whatever you know related to the topic we are discussing, so that also will help you retrieve more. Okay. Additionally, okay, some of you may be new who are watching this. If you have any request on any particular topic, if you want to be taken up, let's say specifically for environment, you can also drop a comment. Okay. So after the video gets done, so that also we are informed that what is the particular demand from your side. Otherwise, we have our own list what all topics we want to do, right? So species in news 1 we have seen. Species in news 2, that is again a very comprehensive final part which will happen in the coming days. Today we are talking of terms in news. Now, before I just start, I'll tell you, almost every year you will find certain terminologies, okay, which has been in news, maybe has been there in Indian Express or the Hindu or some of the major publications. So if you go back, if we see terms like Miyawaki method, terms like bio-rock technology, different types of carbon, blue carbon, etc. So many of these direct terms they ask you, okay. So every year, especially in environment also, every year there are some topics that are trending, okay, some species behavior from a particular term based. So here, this is going to give you a lot of terms, okay, that is going to be helpful. Now the students who have already been a part of Prelims Crash Course or RRR or the first batch, some of these terms we've already covered, okay. So the terms that you're finding new, okay, because even some of the terms that have just appeared in 1 or 2 weeks before, I've tried to add here. So this is going to give you a very good list. Second thing, while discussing COP29 or some of the important, let's say, things related to environment, there have been terms in news. So again, my objective is to ensure that we do a overall, let's say, completion of these parts, okay. So that is there. So let us start, okay. Now yesterday, I think I asked some of you to even look up the great adjutant Stork, okay. Couple of you also messaged because I told you there was a very good video, okay, that was I covered in species in news related to this, okay. This was your first topic, just give me a second, okay. And the reason was, in this case, some of you also have told that this particular person, Purnima Devi Burman, the Stork's sister, okay. Now she is the only Indian in the Times Women of the Year 2025. So to your yesterday's notes, just add this particular fact, okay, that there is a particular Hargila army. Hargila is the name of great adjutant Stork in the local language, okay. So yesterday I did tell you that the conservation of great adjutant Stork is happening because of women-led conservation activities. In that, the leader is the Purnima Devi Burnaman. She has again taken up a big part in the conservation. Terms like Hargila army, Stork sister, and main thing is she is the only Indian to feature in the Times Women of the Year 2025 list for contributions on conservation. So just add this particular part here, okay. So this was again one of the homeworks I had given you, that you see up a video on this, again a very prominent video on PBS. Now let's come back, let's talk about the terms in news, okay. Today is 22nd of March, okay, and today what is being celebrated as Earth Hour, okay. Earth Hour has been again asked some years back by UPSC, what is Earth Hour? So because today is 22nd of March, as I'm just telling you, so every year in the last part of March, 1 hour, okay. So for example, from 8:30 to 9:30, 1 hour in a year, in one day, is dedicated for awareness related to environment, okay. So then the non-essential lights, all of that will be switched off. The idea is this is related to better conservation and awareness among the people. So because we are starting on 22nd March here, so this is Earth Hour. Now talking of Earth Hour, this is supported by WWF, World Wildlife Fund for Nature, which is an NGO. Okay, World Wildlife Fund, this is an NGO, this is supporting it. Now, if you look closely here, and again why I started with this, you'll get to know very shortly, you see a particular animal here, okay. So the animal which is there, or which is the mascot of WWF, is giant panda. Okay, now of course in India you don't have the giant panda. In India we have red panda. But why am I discussing all of this is because this year, and in fact in the last year also, there are many articles on animal diplomacy. Okay, so what is animal diplomacy? So there are countries, for example, China is sending its giant pandas to USA, and USA is also sending some animals in return. Similar term that was in news was, so one term is animal diplomacy, panda diplomacy, and even you have the orangutan diplomacy. All these terms were in news in the last 1 year. So let's quickly understand. So first thing I've told you that it is the giant panda which is the mascot of WWF. Okay, now giant panda is found in China. In fact, I can say this is found in central China and in the lower altitudes. Why I'm saying lower altitudes? Because the red panda that you find in India is found on, of course, in the Himalayas, but in the higher altitudes. Okay, so this is just for our reference that of course when we say panda, it's not just that there is only one panda. Of course there are different types of panda. The giant panda, or the China's panda diplomacy, talks about a giant panda. In India you talk about a red panda. Okay, now again these are moments. So again, why do the countries exchange in this animal diplomacy? Main thing is goodwill, and this can also support conservation efforts. This also brings in more awareness. Okay, so whenever the term is China's panda diplomacy, think about giant panda, and giant panda is found in the central part of China. So that is one. In fact, this was very much in news in 2024 also. Even in 2024, articles on animal diplomacy. So this is one thing you need to know. Now, because I said red panda, okay, so again remember, red panda would be found in the Himalayas, number one. Second thing, it will be found in higher altitude as compared to the giant panda, higher altitudes. Now, this is red panda, giant panda. Size wise, of course, we can know the giant panda would be bigger in size, this will be smaller in size. That is the main takeaway. Now, why was red panda in news? Okay, because again, these are related topics, hence I'm trying to make a linkage. So here in Darjeeling, there had been a particular, let's say there's a gift of Darjeeling. So there had been particular conservation program which is going for these pandas in Padmaja Naidu Himalayan Zoological Park. This is in West Bengal. Padmaja Naidu Himalayan Zoological Park. Okay, and this again, same news was again repeated. Darjeeling Zoo attempts country's first augmentation of this endangered mammal in the wild. The name of the zoo is Padmaja Naidu. What is the protected area? What is the national park? The name is Singalila National Park. Just a second. Okay, yeah. This is Singalila National Park. Where is Singalila National Park? Of course, this is in West Bengal. Now, if you're making your notes, just keep on writing the protected areas or the keywords. Put a star mark on Padmaja Naidu. Why? Because when I do species in news part 2, again in a different context, for snow leopards, I will again tell you Padmaja Naidu Himalayan Zoological Park. That was again in news. So main thing that has happened, this particular zoo attempts the country's first augmentation of these endangered mammals. So again, conservation of red panda actually happens here. Again, when I say Sikkim, these parts or other parts of Himalaya, you will find red panda. There is a giant panda. China will remember panda diplomacy. We will also remember WWF, Earth Hour, and here also the mascot is giant panda. Okay, so these are the few things we'll remember for ourselves. Okay, now orangutan diplomacy. If you see the PYQ of 2023, which one of the following makes a tool with a stick to scrape insects from the hole in a tree or a log of wood? This is how your orangutan looks like. Now, if you see, you have fishing cat, you have orangutan, you have otter, you have sloth bear. An animal which is using a tool shows a higher form of intelligence. Okay, if you think from this angle, okay, that which of the following is the most intelligent one, the one that is the most closest to human beings, okay, will be the answer. So when you read, so of course, these are your apes. Apes in fact are also divided into lesser apes and greater apes. These are the greater apes. So orangutan in fact are very highly intelligent, very close relative to humans also. So be it chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, these are highly intelligent, hence they are able to use tools, these tools. Now with this, the term is there, orangutan diplomacy. So first thing is, again, when I say orangutan, which particular region of the word comes to mind? You can think of Malaysia. So Malaysia was in news, which has come up with this term of orangutan diplomacy, okay. In fact, this whole article of the Hindu talks about Chinese model of panda diplomacy and Malaysia's orangutan diplomacy. So main thing is, this is going to help in conservation of orangutans, okay. Again, remember who are orangutans? You will remember these are primates, okay. When I say primates, even monkeys, apes, all these are example of primates. Now my homework to you is, some of you may have already done this, even in the PYQ session that I had done. What is the difference between a monkey and a ape? Very simple. You have to see two things. Which of these has a tail, and which of these has a bigger brain to body ratio. That is the main difference between monkey and apes. By the way, primates are not just these two. You can also have lemurs, etc., etc. But again, this is just for your reference. Now, Malaysia, talking of orangutan diplomacy. Second thing to remember, Malaysia is the second largest producer of palm oil in the world. Okay. Now what happens? Because of this oil plantations, there is a lot of deforestation that happens. And because of this, the orangutans are under threat. Which is why if orangutan diplomacy is to happen, this will get better with time. That is the whole idea. So orangutan diplomacy, think of Malaysia. In Malaysia, Malaysia is the second largest producer of palm oil in the world. Because of that, a lot of deforestation is going on, and which ultimately, with this you want to, with this diplomacy, you want to reverse this. You want to have better conservation and protection. That's all. This is orangutan diplomacy. Okay, let's move ahead. There's a term Wallace line. In case if somebody has been reading the Hindu in the recent week, this term had appeared just before Holi. So again, March of 5th, there is a term of Wallace line. Now people with geography optional may be knowing this. Here all we need to know, if you get a one-liner exactly, that what is a Wallace line. And it's a very easy concept. First thing, this is an imaginary line. Okay, the Wallace line is basically an imaginary line. And this line tries to tell us, for example, this is your Asia. And this is Australia. So this is a particular imaginary line which brings a distinction in the kind of species that are found in the region. So the animals to the west of the Wallace line are found in Asia. The animals to, of course, the east of this are found in Australia, which is why you see a difference of species. For example, I say, yesterday also we discussed marsupials. So Australia, for example, is more prominent or prominently known for its marsupials. Asia, you will find different kind of animals. Okay. So again, what this is, it's an imaginary boundary separating parts of Asia and Australia. I'll also show you the map also. This will also make this easy. Geographically, just have a look at. There is this Makassar, okay, the Makassar Strait. It runs to the east of Borneo and also western coast of Sulawesi, right? Now, if you see the map, okay, this is the Wallace line, okay. So this is the line if I draw here. In this particular part, when you have Sumatra, Borneo, Java, okay, this is the part of Asia, and then this is the part of Australia. In Australia, you have different kinds of species, okay, different types of, let's say, kangaroos, marsupials, etc. So remember this. So you have Bali, Lombok, Celebes, okay, so you have a Celeb Sea also, Philippine Sea. The area around this is important. So again, just remember what we need to know. This particular line was given by Alfred Wallace. So on his name, the Wallace line is there. Main thing is, it is giving us a distinction. The distinction between how the difference of species is there. That is the whole core idea here, okay. How the species are differentiating, that is the main idea. I hope you get to know. And just if you follow the map here, this is the Wallace line, and this separates this part. So you have, let's say, Sumatran tigers, Sumatran rhino, Javan rhino, Okay, so this part is different and this part is different, and how the species vary. So there's a Wallace line explaining that. That's it. Okay. Now this same person, Alfred Wallace, also talked about a term known as megafauna. Okay. Now megafauna is a term that is many times used. Recently, again in Indian Express, there is a particular article which just mentions this term. Okay. That what discovery of prehistoric ostrich, which happened in Andhra. Main thing, if you see here, how this impacts our understanding of extinction of megafauna in India. See, we know what is flora. Okay, the plants. Fauna is the animal. The name is mega. Okay, you know, megabyte. Okay, gigabyte. So mega has to be bigger in size or bigger. So generally, what is mega? So again, this was given by the naturalist Alfred Wallace. We just saw Wallace line. Here, just remember, animals weighing more than 50 kg. Generally, this is used to signify. So megafauna is nothing but bigger animals. Okay. So if you again get this as, because again this can be used to confuse you, okay, that megafauna is used in biotechnology, etc. and etc. So again, because this was mentioned in a couple of articles, so I just also included simple megafauna just related to Mr. Wallace, animals greater than 50 kg, so bigger animals. And this particular discovery helps us in understanding the extinction of megafauna. Okay. Talking of extinction, UPSC has already asked you once, what is sixth mass extinction? Okay. So again, this term has been there. I'll also relate it to one more term, Anthropocene, very shortly. Okay, so we'll also see that. Now, in 1 year, there have been at least 4 different articles in just one newspaper. Of course, across the newspapers, there have been many articles on tardigrades. Okay, so I'll just tell you about tardigrades. The term I'm talking about is cryptobiosis. Okay, so let me just show you the different kind of articles that have come. If tardigrades, they crowdsource their remarkable genes, can humans do it? New tardigrade species named after the Chandrayaan-3 mission. New marine tardigrade species named after former President APJ Abdul Kalam. Another question, could tardigrades have colonized the moon? Okay, so all these articles are within just 1 year or so. 4 different types of articles. Now, so one thing is cryptobiosis. What is cryptobiosis? Cryptobiosis is nothing but a mechanism which is demonstrated by tardigrades. And then who are these tardigrades? Okay, so if you see this, it looks like a pig. Okay, so which is why they're also known as moss piglets. And don't be mistaken, these are not these big creatures. These are very small microscopic creatures. This is again a very zoomed image for representation purposes. These are also known as water bears. But the most important thing is these are able to withstand the most extremes of conditions. Okay, so it can be hazardous radiation, they can survive it. Extreme heat, they can survive. Cold, they can survive. And they can go on for long periods without water. Okay, so they have these remarkable properties to survive in extreme conditions, which is why tardigrades are also studied under extremophiles. Extremophiles are your organisms who can withstand high extremes of temperature. Okay, so this is one. Now, these tardigrades, so again, they have their own phylum, which is Tardigrada. Water bears or moss piglets, these are microscopic. Okay, these are invertebrates without a backbone. Last thing again, remember, is they undergo cryptobiosis. Okay, and in this, what they do, they will pause almost all their biological process. Many of us would be aware of terms like hibernation. Okay, so we have mammals who go in hibernation. Let's say bear going for hibernation in winters. Okay, so similar mechanism, although in a very extreme manner, is known as cryptobiosis. So in this one just article, you see a term known as cryptobiosis. You see a term that is known as tardigrades. Okay, you see water bears, moss piglets, and on various accounts they have been asked that these are known as one of the most resilient species. Why? Because they are able to pause all their biological process, and when they do so, they don't have to depend on external resources. So hence, even in extremes of temperature, they will be able to survive. So not one, but at least 4 different types of articles. Now, these 2 articles, how will you remember? You know, sometimes the name of species is asked. Now, There is Batelipes calami. It ends with calami. So you will remember this is a marine tardigrade. Batelipes calami. Okay, the genus is Batelipes. Similar name is Batelipes chandrayani. So which is renamed after Chandrayaan 3. So based on two different names, and again, can they have colonized moon? The idea for this is because they are able to withstand very difficult conditions. So even if they are sent to moon, can they actually be staying and can they colonize it? So remember the tardigrades or any of the species related attributes, the term cryptobiosis was also in use, and all the related development is also what I have told you. Okay. The Makassar Strait, Sri Lakshmi, I just told you, was just related to this whole area. Okay. Here, if I zoom, this is the Makassar Strait. This is the Celebes Island. This is the Sulawesi part, just above this strait. So Borneo and Celebes, these are separated by the Makassar Strait. So here, just remember some of the names of the area: Sulawesi coast or the Makassar Strait between the Borneo, and this is where your Wallace line goes in. Okay. Megafauna we have seen. Cryptobiosis you have seen, and cryptobiosis, please remember, is talking about pausing this whole biological process. Now, another term that was also asked, brumation. This is again an article of 2024. Now, I've already told you what is hibernation. Hibernation actually happens in winters, and hibernation is for your mammals. Prominent examples like bear. The same activity in winters, if it is done by reptiles or even amphibians, that is known as brumation. That is it. Okay. So even in winters, again, the harsh conditions are there. If the reptiles want to survive, how they can survive is through brumation. That is all you need to know. So if they even ask you a single liner that what is brumation, hibernation, generally people know. So there are lesser chances of them asking you hibernation, but even they can ask you brumation. They can ask you cryptobiosis, what are tardigrades, what are water bears, piglets. So just keep a tab on this. Okay. So this, in my regard, can be one of the topics that can be asked. Okay. So that is brumation. Okay. Now I'll introduce you to one more term. Okay. Now this term was asked or mentioned or published in just the last month. Just see the term. If you're just aware about the terms, your job is done. This is quiescence. Okay, quiescence. Now, first thing is, in which context was this mentioned? So just read this whole line. How does Antarctica's only native insect species survive extreme winter? If you note all these things, cryptobiosis, extreme conditions, even brumation, extreme conditions, even in hibernation, extreme conditions, same one more term, quiescence. So what is exactly happening in quiescence here? So here, let's say there's a flightless Antarctic midge. By the way, this is the only insect which is native to Antarctica. Main thing is, see, Antarctica, Arctic, all these have very extremes of temperature. So how is it able to survive? Okay, in these freezing temperatures, the reason is it first of all goes into quiescence. Okay, so what is this? Just remember, this is a form of dormancy, but main thing is it is very immediate. So the moment you have very difficult conditions, adverse conditions, they go into form of dormancy. Okay, and of course, when the conditions improve, they become active again. So if I want to be active, inactive, there is a very quick transition that happens. This is quiescence. So quiescence enables swift transition between active and inactive lifestyles. So what is the main idea? Here also, the organism is able to withstand very harsh conditions. That is the main idea here. What is quiescence? That organism is able to withstand very harsh conditions. Okay. So what terms have we seen? Quiescence, brumation, we have seen cryptobiosis. Okay. So we've seen some of these terms, so keep these in mind. Now let's move to the next one. Ecological Armageddon. Now this is a hypothetical concept. Now, few years back, UPSC had asked a question: what would happen if the butterfly population drastically reduces? Butterfly is an insect. So there is also a term that is known as insect apocalypse. See, these insects play a very important role, right from pollination to a lot of other supporting activities. Okay. So the term ecological Armageddon, it's a simple term which telling you that the drastic decline in the insect population will lead to very dangerous consequences for the ecosystem. That is ecological Armageddon. And why are we seeing this term? Because a damselfly species which was found in Western Ghats was named after this concept. The name was Armageddon reed tail. So nobody's going to ask you where was it found, etc. Main thing is what is the concept. The concept simply talks you about the drastic decrease in the insect population will have multi-dimensional negative impacts on the Earth's ecosystem. That is the main thing. So just one liner, what is ecological Armageddon? Okay, they've already asked you the 6th mass extinction previously. Okay, so again a similar concept is ecological Armageddon. Okay, so keep that in mind. Kumki, many times we've discussed in our classes, even in the PYQ session. Just a very quick reminder for you, what is a Kumki? So Kumki are your trained elephants. So again, very recent news of February 2025. Coimbator's friendly elephant, okay, returns to home ground as Kumki. So what happens here? See, when you talk of elephants, so when you have some wild elephants, these wild elephants can lead to man-animal conflict. To avoid or stop man-animal conflict, what we have, you have Kumki, trained elephants. So Kumki elephants will interact with wild elephants, they will guide them, and this will prevent man-animal conflict. So even the word Kumki, okay, that what exactly this is, so this happens across different states. So some time back, even Odisha wanted some Kumki elephants from Tamil Nadu. Okay, so this keeps on happening. So just see the name Kumki. Kumki are the trained elephants which help in preventing the man-animal conflict. That's all. Next, plankton crash. Okay, crash you already know. If there's a car crash, something bad would have happened. Planktons, who are planktons? So when I say planktons, these are marine microscopic organisms. Planktons can be phytoplankton, the ones that produce food. They can be zooplanktons, who eat up the phytoplanktons, and that's how the chain goes on. Now this term was again in news. Why? Because red coloration of sea in Puducherry because of a plankton crash. So what exactly happened here? That here what was seen, that this particular lake or this particular sea in Puducherry got polluted, and the particular population of these phytoplanktons, that is Noctiluca scintillans, now they were put under a lot of stress and pressure, and they were ruptured. Ruptured means damaged, and because of this, red colored pigment was released in the sea. The whole sea became red in this part. So this was referred to as the plankton crash. Okay, plankton crash basically referring to the rupture or the damage or ultimately the death of multiple plankton species, which again is a negative thing. Now one thing extra I'll tell you, because the mention of Noctiluca is there. See, if Noctiluca is threatened, ruptured or damaged, it leads to plankton crash. But normally, if everything is fine, the same Noctiluca scintillans can also glow. The phenomena being bioluminescence. So you have seen sometimes the lakes are glowing, okay? Blue light seems to appear. It is also because of this particular organism. So this particular organism can also be seen in plankton crash, can also be seen in this case. But please know, plankton crash is not always related to this. It can be related to other planktons also. It is in this case that this particular plankton was particularly disturbed, ruptured, which led to the release of certain toxins and red pigments. So just keep that in mind. This is the term plankton crash. Okay. Another term has been in news almost in this year, stromatolites. Okay, so just one line you have to know. Stromatolites in fact are also related to your phytoplanktons. So first thing to remember in stromatolites, that these are basically old, very old fossil fuel. Okay, in fact one of the oldest fossils. Now they are formed by the cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria, okay, again you can think of cyanobacteria as a phytoplankton. Cyanobacteria also helps in nitrogen fixation in sea. Now you know the phytoplanktons, what they will do. They will do photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide plus water will release oxygen. So cyanobacteria released a lot of oxygen into the atmosphere. And later on, when this started to decompose, then you had seen a lot of that fossils being formed. So this is the article that is telling you stromatolites found in Red Sea offer clues to the earliest life on Earth. Because earlier, please remember, the life was very rich in carbon dioxide, very high amounts of CO2 was there. So slowly and steadily, oxygen started to increase. How oxygen started to increase? Because of cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria led to something known as the Great Oxygenation Event. Okay, so we are again finding stromatolites in different parts of the world. Stromatolites are one of the oldest fossils, very old, and these are formed predominantly from the cyanobacteria. That is all you need to know. Okay, so stromatolites, please remember, cyanobacteria, great oxygenation event. Okay, plankton, again plankton crash was in news, so we are just seeing this term. So again, if you know the term, then you will be very comfortable while solving these questions. Okay, and again, after, let's say you're done with these sessions, what you should do, how should you in fact follow? See the term, and whatever notes you are seeing, just try to think whether you are able to know. The moment somebody asks you stromatolites, if you know these 2 or 3 keywords, that means you know the concept. Then if they make a 2 statement, 3 statement question, even then you will be able to solve it. Okay. Now, Miyawaki technique, now this already has been asked by UPSC once in a PPYQ. But even this is in news, very recent article of Mahakumbh, okay, that dense forest created in Prayagraj using the Miyawaki technique. This is again from PIB, 8th January 2025. Now here I just want to tell you a couple of things, and with that I'll also tell you something more about Miyawaki. Now, Miyawaki method is also known as pot plantation method. First keyword, A. What happens in Miyawaki method? It is used to create dense forests. In fact, dense urban forests. In urban areas, what is the biggest problem? You don't have enough land. So what happens? This Miyawaki technique takes less land. Now, normally when you go for plantations, people go for single type of trees or single type of varieties. Here what will happen? Small, different types of varieties are being planted. What will happen because of this? Okay, of course, this will grow faster, takes up less land. Third, after 3 or 4 years, it does not require constant maintenance. If there is lesser maintenance required, so you don't have to have people to take care of weeds, etc., etc. So that means the cost will also be less. So in many places, not just here, so of course in Prayagraj, even in Uttarakhand, in different parts of, in Telangana, in Tamil Nadu, even in Karnataka, various parts, Miyawaki technique is being followed. Okay, so here you try to create a dense urban forest. Now, Miyawaki is named after Akira Miyawaki, who is a Japanese botanist. And the main idea here is, in limited area, how can you create dense urban forest? Okay, so less land is needed, less cost, grows very fast, less maintenance overall. The other name is pot plantation method. Okay, now this is the Miyawaki method. Second thing, of course, you need to know is again the Million Miyawaki initiative. Okay, for example, Israel embassy joins the Million Miyawaki initiative. Just remember, the Million Miyawaki Foundation is a NGO. This simply is a community-led initiative. Okay, how UPSC can trick you? That Million Miyawaki Foundation is supported by Japan, and you will think, acha, Japan is related to Miyawaki. So this is simply a community-led, non-profit entity, NGO. Okay. In fact, if you see their part, what they are doing, they have started to plant 1 million trees. Okay, in the 10 cities, and they're starting with Delhi NCR. And Israel Embassy has also joined it. This is the Million Miyawaki method. Okay, so Israel Embassy, collaboration with non-profit entity, the name was this Million Miyawaki project. Main thing, it is community-led, okay, project. So that is all you need to know. Plant 1 million trees in Delhi NCR, Miyawaki technique, okay. Other things, of course, urban forestation, community participation, youth engagement, other activities will follow, but that is the main part, okay, that what this is. No, great oxygenation will basically lead to oxygen formation, but slowly and steadily when the decomposition will happen, then the fossil will be formed. So both these two things are separate. Oxygenation happened because of cyanobacteria, but slowly and steadily, see, it is ultimately a plant matter. Plant will get decomposed. From decomposition, slowly and steadily, fossils will be created. Okay, so these are two separate things. Okay, so that is one. Now, this term, many of us know, Anthropocene. Anthropo means man. So see, there are two terms here. See, Anthropocene epoch term has been in use. Why? Because of 6th mass extinction. Main thing to remember here, the previous 5 mass extinctions were by natural factors and they took a long time. The 6th mass extinction is called as Anthropocene. Why? Because it is overwhelmingly because of the human-made factors, man-made factors. Okay, number one. So Anthropocene, the moment you see the term, this term again signifies that how human-made activities are leading to more and more devastations, be it on climate front because of biodiversity loss, etc., etc. With Anthropocene, you also remember a term, triple planetary crisis. Triple planetary crisis. Here you have talking of 3 things, which talks about climate change. Here you talk about loss of biodiversity. And the last thing here you talk about is pollution, and more specifically air pollution. So why are we discussing Anthropocene? So first of all, know the term Anthropocene. Any discussion on climate generally will revolve the discussion on Anthropocene, number one. A global project paints evidences of air pollution in India. So basically, a project is Air of Anthropocene project. Okay. So what this basically is, just a one-liner you need to know. It uses light paintings. Why? It is just going to visualize air pollution in parts of India, Ethiopia, UK. So this is again for awareness generation. That is why it is said the global project paints evidence. Why? Because the light paintings are used to visualize how the air pollution looks like. Okay. So just remember this. Overall, the concept can be related to Anthropocene. Okay. Air of the Anthropocene project, talking about how pollution is increasing. Just remember this term, Anthropocene. Now, ecocide. Side means to die, kill. You have heard about suicide, genocide, okay, fratricide. Eco, think of ecology. So first thing, again, global push to make ecocide as a crime. So what is the meaning of term, or what is the meaning of ecocide? Simple, unlawful acts which are committed with knowledge that there is going to be a substantial, severe damage to the environment and by these human activities. So that is ecocide. Now, this was in news. Second, Belgium was leading in, if I say Europe, becoming the first country to recognize ecocide as a crime. So even the term can be asked that what is ecocide? Ecocide you have seen, Anthropocene you have seen. So just be aware of what is the term and what it means. So ecocide simply means any of these acts which is going to cause very harmful damage to the environment, and the people causing it know that they're causing this damage. So you can again link Anthropocene also with ecocide. Okay. In fact, this whole debate is going on how to make it a crime, and in this fact, Belgium is leading. So that is just one thing that you need to know. Okay. Another term that you have is the grasshopper effect. Now this term, again I'm telling you, is not at all related to grasshopper. Okay. Now this term, the other name for grasshopper effect is global distillation. Now what happens and what this term tells you, this term is actually related to persistent organic pollutants. Now we have seen examples of persistent organic pollutants like DDT, dichloro-diphenyl trichloroethane, examples like PCB, polychlorinated biphenyls, and many more. Initially, which was popularly known as the Dirty Dozen, which in fact the POPs are governed under Stockholm Convention. Okay, so this is something we know. Now next thing, what is actually happening here, that these POPs, they evaporate in the warmer regions and they keep on moving. There is a consistent movement that will happen. So they will evaporate, they are transported by winds. So if you see hotter regions, from here they move to temperate regions, from here they move to colder regions, and they again condense, deposit. So there is a whole cycle that will go on. This is known as the grasshopper effect, and this tells you how these persistent organic pollutants keep on moving. This is referred to as the grasshopper effect. Okay, so just see the term, what this simply means. Grasshopper effect is simply the movement of these particular parts that is going to happen. That's all. The movement of POPs, persistent organic pollutants. All right. And one more term, cryomesh. The moment I say term cryo, okay, think of very cold temperatures, even close to minus 196 degrees Celsius. Okay. This is where you have your liquid nitrogen. Now, earlier UPSC had asked you a question on bio-rock technology. Bio-rock technology is also known as mineral accretion technology. In bio-rock technology, the main thing is you are saving the corals, coral reefs. You create a bio-rock. There is a positive side, there is a negative side. So what will happen? There is a structure, and when you apply the current, what will happen? All this calcium-related particles will try to come. All the minerals will try to compact and form together, creating a coral-like structure. And if that structure is formed, then this will lead to some zooxanthellae, etc. will come, and the coral can be restored. That was bio-rock. Okay. Another thing that was in news since 2 or 3 years was cryomesh, and finally, almost a month back, this whole update has come. Words first, cryo-born coral babies. How were they born? Through a cryomesh. They have been planted in the Great Barrier Reef. Whenever we read about the part of this coral reefs, we read about Great Barrier Reef having the most extensive coral colonies. But at the same time, we also know that Great Barrier Reef is experiencing a lot of coral bleaching. So in this, what we are doing, the words first, cryopreservation. Lab-grown coral babies have been transported and they've settled into the Great Barrier Reef. So this is again something very important as an update, that even cryopreservation can be used in this case. Yesterday, remember, we had seen that through IVF, even marsupials can be formed. Through IVF, even Great Indian bustard can also be conserved. So remember, this cryomesh would also be a part of ex situ conservation here. Because this whole cryo, this will be again a part of lab or in some different attribute, and then later on they are planted in a different area. So keep this in mind. Okay. So till now, what we have seen, the very first part, and again after this there are some more terms I'll do with you. We've seen what is the Earth hour. Okay. Remember WWF. Remember the giant panda. We've seen animal diplomacy. We've seen orangutan diplomacy and panda diplomacy. Okay. Orangutan, we'll remember Malaysia, second largest for palm oil. Okay. We've seen the Wallace line. It is a line which divides the species of Asia and Australia. We also saw megafauna greater than 50 kgs. We saw cryptobiosis. I'll remember tardigrades, known as water piglets. Okay, or sorry, the moss piglets and the water bears. Okay, brumation. I'll remember reptiles. Quiescence. I'll remember the Antarctic midge, the only native insect that is found in this region. Okay, all these three, by the way, are ways to withstand, or these are ways to suspend the metabolic activity. Okay. Then ecological Armageddon, drastic reduction in the population of species. Kumki for elephants. Plankton crash, we saw Noctiluca scintillans, that leads to red pigmentation. Stromatolites, think of cyanobacteria, very old fossils. Miyawaki technique, we just saw that in Prayagraj, in different parts of India. We also saw Million Miyawaki initiative. Okay. Other name was pod plantation, how this is helpful. Anthropocene epoch, heir of the Anthropocene project. Ecocide, think of Belgium, think about, can it be made a crime? Grasshopper effect, persistent organic pollutants, how this is global distillation from equator to poles, condensation, evaporation, constantly keeps on happening. Cryomesh for the words coral reefs. Okay. Now some more terms I have for you. So this is again related to biodiversity part. Now I'll talk about climate change and some related terms. Okay. Many of these terms you would be aware. If there is any term that you find new, just please keep on writing that. Okay. Now, I'll take some of these doubts. Biorock I'll take at the end, because again Biorock is slightly older concept. I'll just do some of the new parts here first. Now, Keeling curve. Keeling curve simply tells you about carbon dioxide concentration. Okay. Right now, the carbon dioxide concentrations have surpassed 425 ppm. ppm means parts per million. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, and the increasing concentration of carbon dioxide means increasing greenhouse effect. Okay, so Keeling curve tells you about carbon dioxide concentration. So there is a Mauna Loa observatory in Hawaii. From there we get this concentration. Okay, so Mauna Loa observatory in Hawaii, and this number is very important. The IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, also quotes this, that carbon dioxide level is increasing, and because of this, Keeling curve always remains important. Okay, so even in normal articles, you will find that Keeling curve. Right now, this is at around 426 ppm, but the safe level was 350. So the carbon dioxide is far above the safe level, which is causing more and more global warming. Because with these greenhouse gases, this leads to greenhouse effect. This causes global warming. So first term to remember always is Keeling curve. Now, because I spoke about IPCC, I'll also tell you one more term, representative concentration pathways, RCP. Again, if you see this whole one article on Indian Express dedicated to the same term, what are emission scenarios and what is RCP. Okay. Now, many of us see cricket. Okay. In cricket, you would have seen right now, if the team has scored 15 runs in 5 overs, how much they will score after 50 overs. If they score at current run rate, higher run rate, even higher run rate. So there are certain projections they create, projections. Okay. So IPCC report also creates projections that if you are doing the current level of carbon dioxide, how much will you go to? So if you see this curve here, this is carbon dioxide, this is the years. Let's say this is RCP 2.6. These are certain numbers, no need to remember the numbers. These are just certain scenarios that if your consumption is normal, this is how much carbon dioxide will increase. If the consumption is more, this much carbon dioxide will increase. If the consumption is more, this much will increase. So here these are just climate modelings, or these are some emission scenarios based on the future projections. So that term is represented as representative concentration pathways. So they can be different pathways. If we reduce it, we can go to somewhere lower, but if we keep on increasing it, it can be as bad as almost 1200 ppm of carbon dioxide. So RCP related to IPCC and talks about how would the word be different related to these carbon dioxide emissions. So these are just projections. 50 years or 100 years later, how much CO2 would have increased. Okay, this is RCP. Now, we would have also heard about, so I'll tell you two concepts here, tipping points and one is planetary boundaries. Okay, tipping points. The whole world is divided into tipping points. Okay, this is again conceptual. Now we already know climate change is happening. There's already global warming going on. So because of this, some very important ecosystems of the world, like the Amazon rainforest, known as the lungs of the earth, okay, Arctic ice sea, coral reefs, permafrost, ice sheets in different parts, boreal forests, they are under stress. And there is only a particular limit up to which they can withhold the stress. So tipping points are those regions that if climate change is not controlled, these regions will have irreversible damage. Second, these regions are very important, very important. Okay, so this will ultimately lead to irreversible damage. Now, among all these tipping points, there is one thing I would want you to read. Okay, that is Atlantic circulation. Other things are very easy. Okay, so one homework I am giving you, just read about AMOC, Atlantic Meridional Ocean Circulation. What just happens, I'll just brief you. This is your Atlantic part. Normally what was happening, these ice sheets were present. So warm water goes to the polar regions and the warm water keeps on, or at least causes a moderating effect. Now what is happening, the ice sheets of Greenland and all these regions, because of climate change, have started to melt. Okay, so the problem is this warm water which goes from the equator to these parts becomes cold and it is not able to have a moderating influence. And this influences all the global circulation system. Everything is impacted. Okay, so main thing to remember here, because of climate change, AMOC is weakening. It is becoming very weak. Why? Because of melting of ice sheets, the warm water is not becoming warm enough. It is getting colder very quickly. Okay, so I would want you to read slightly more about AMOC. Other than that, just remember what are tipping points. Okay, this would lead to irreversible damage. Other than this, there is also a very important term, planetary boundaries, just almost similar to the concept that we have discussed. Okay, so now a team of scientists, they created this particular processes. Okay, right now they say there are total 9 planetary boundaries, and over the years 6 planetary boundaries have been crossed. Only 3 are left. Okay, which also tells you all these areas in red, that these areas are under a lot of stress. The ones which are not in red, these 3, stratospheric ozone or aerosol, ocean acidification, they are almost on the brink of getting crossed. So this can also get crossed. Both these two things are saying that climate change has multidimensional impacts. So that is the main takeaway, that planetary boundaries, first of all, this concept tells you all these boundaries are interrelated. Okay, so be it climate change, carbon dioxide concentration, okay, land systems, biogeochemical, freshwater, everywhere you see more and more human impact. And whatever is this, so this is the safe operating space. You have already exceeded the safe operating space. Why? Because there is a lot of human exploitation, which is why we started the lecture with Earth R. Okay, so keep that in mind. Planetary boundaries are interdependent. If we cross any of these boundaries, all the other boundaries will be impacted. Okay, so this is a concept which is very recent. Total, if the statement says all the planetary boundaries have been crossed, no, only 6 out of 9 have been crossed. These are interdependent. That tells you that in Earth, the processes are very much interrelated. So just remember what is the term planetary boundaries. Okay. Now, another very important concept. In fact, if you have seen the paper, in fact, just before COP29 also, there were many articles that spoke about this term feedback loop. In very simple terms, I'll explain to you. And this concept, sometimes we are not able to understand. What is feedback loop? Okay. Another term that is also used here is, the more complicated term is radiative forcings. So first, let's see this. There's a positive feedback loop. There's a negative feedback loop. Okay. Now, whenever we say something, that something positive feedback loop is happening, we generally have a mind. We think, kuch acha ho raha hoga, something good will happen. But please remember, in this concept of climate change, positive feedback loop is actually negative. Name is positive, but something bad is happening. Let us simply explain and let us understand how. So, for example, if we see this positive feedback loop, we already know there is global warming happening. There is an increase of greenhouse gas. This greenhouse gas leads to more and more melting of ice. Yes. If the ice melts, the carbon dioxide, the methane that is trapped in it, that will also release. When this will release, okay, this again will lead to more and more heating. So positive feedback loop directly tells you that more and more warming of Earth is going to happen. Okay, so positive feedback loop simply means more warming of Earth. And one very good example of positive feedback loop is the Arctic amplification, which is just the next topic after this. So there's a positive feedback loop, simply means whatever activities contribute to heating of Earth, which simply means more release of greenhouse gas will lead to more heating will lead to all the ice which is present on the glacier. Ice will melt, ice is white in color, ice reflects more. The glaciers or the stones, these are darker in color, they will absorb more. Again, the concept here is albedo. Okay, so this will lead to even more heating will lead to more warming will lead to more. So again, this is a positive feedback loop. Positive feedback loop, just remember, this leads to more warming. Positive feedback loop. What is negative feedback loop? It leads to cooling. So sometimes if aerosols are released, okay, aerosols are again these particles, and what will aerosol do? Let's say this is incoming sunlight. Aerosols reflect the incoming sunlight. This is Earth. If some of the sunlight is reflected, so what will this mean? Cooling of Earth can happen. So negative feedback loop simply means cooling will happen. Okay, so that is the main takeaway here. Now if somebody asks you a question, okay, that positive feedback loop or negative feedback loop, please be very clear. Positive feedback loop, anything which contributes to more and more heating of the Earth. Negative is cooling, because in our mind you will think, nahi, negative means heating ho rahi hogi. So please remember this concept. Or negative radiative forcings will be related to cooling of the earth, positive will be related to heating. If this is clear, we also see one more term, that is runaway climate change. Runaway climate change, or a term that is known as runaway greenhouse effect. This term also is sometimes in the news. What this term means? It is a scenario where the earth experiences positive feedback loop. That is why in this whole slide only one term I have highlighted, positive. You already know positive means warming, and consistent warming is happening. Okay, so that will lead to irreversible warming, and this will make the earth inhabitable. So this is the more far-fetched concept, the most apocalypse concept. This is referred to as runaway climate change. That the positive feedback loop will be so severe that the life cannot survive here. Okay, so please remember that what this particular concept is. Okay, aerosols are these particular particulate matter. Okay, so again, if in this case a particular aerosol will lead to, so again these particles will help in reflection of the incoming sunlight. Okay, so again the air you breathe, you have these vaporizers, moisturizers, they also release certain aerosols. Okay, I hope this part is clear. Runaway climate change. Now, exact same thing that you saw in positive feedback loop, one of the best examples of positive feedback loop is Arctic amplification, which is also known as polar amplification. In one line, if you have to understand what is Arctic amplification, whatever heating is happening in the world, almost double heating of that is happening in the Arctic region. Double heating. Okay, so what is this? At least twice as fast heating that is happening in the Arctic, twice as fast warming. This is polar or Arctic amplification. Now, very simply, what happens here? You have a ship releases black carbon. Okay, so what will happen here? The black carbon, being black in color, will deposit on ice. Ice will start to melt. Why? Ice is white. Ice will reflect more. Black carbon, being black, will absorb more. And ice is there on any glacier. These are basically rock-like structures. Okay, so on this you have certain deposition of black carbon. This will accelerate the melting of ice. With this, what will happen? So ultimately what will happen? When the ice disappear, more and more water or rock will be exposed. They will be darker in color. They will absorb more heat. That will lead to more and more cooling. Sorry, that will lead to more and more melting of ice. So more area will be exposed. Okay, so ocean is actually going to absorb more heat, and more heat of this is going to get released. So this is ultimately a positive feedback loop. Arctic amplification. Okay, so here just remember this term, Arctic amplification. This is again very prominent, that more and more heating happens here. More sunlight absorption, more ice melting, etc. So again, that is main thing you have to know. Okay, Arctic amplification. Same thing, if you go, there's a blue ocean event. See, ocean, if it has a lot of ice, ocean will be white. Why is the ocean blue? Because all the ice has melted. So this is again a concept when all the surface, all the sea ice has disappeared. Okay, and the color changes from white. White means the ice was there, to blue means only now the ocean is left. So blue ocean event is related to melting of all this ice. Same thing is related to Arctic ice or Arctic amplification. Although the ice can melt in other places, but again, if this happens, you can also say this is a blue ocean event. Just a single one line. Now, another term is scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions, and with this I'll also tell you fugitive emissions, right? And then a couple of other terms. Now these terms are used. So see, UPSC in 2016 asked you a greenhouse gas protocol. This is a accounting tool to quantify the greenhouse gas emissions. If I want to quantify the greenhouse gas emissions as per this protocol, a term is used is scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions. Okay, even this can be used. These terms are related to. So these are related to number 1, greenhouse gas. And scope, they simply tell you what is the source of emission. Because see, greenhouse gas protocol is the accounting tool. The students who have already done the PYQ session with me, I've also told you who gave this protocol. If you remember it, write in the comments. Otherwise, if you don't know, put a star mark after it, either Google it or see the sessions. Greenhouse gas protocol. Okay, It is an accounting tool. It has scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. Scope 1, just one thing. These are the direct emissions. Things directly emitted from the source. Direct emissions. Okay? Directly from the site they are emitted. Scope 2 are, for example, from the utilities, the energy. So you have different transmission lines. Even from there, certain emissions can happen. And third is emissions because of the supply chain or the service. The movement of the vehicles, supply chain, in ensuring all of this also leads to emission. That is scope 3 emission. Okay, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Most emissions can also come from this scope 1 because directly on site there are many factors which lead to emissions. So just remember scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 related to greenhouse gas protocol. It helps in accounting the sources of emission, that's all. Scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Another term is fugitive emissions. Okay, very simple thing. These are unintentional emissions. Undesirable emissions. If there's a leakage, unintentional leakage which happens, okay, any discharge of gas, vapor from any of these things from any industrial plant, that is fugitive. You don't know, you were not aware about it, there is some leakage which is happening. The ones which are direct and indirect are these. So these are scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and there's also one thing, fugitive emissions. Okay. So just remember the term, these are unintentional or even undesirable emissions. Now, a couple of carbon related terms, because again we've seen so many terms related to carbon in the news. Okay. A term, again very recently in March there was an article, although this term is not very new, carbon intensity. Okay. What is carbon intensity? We've already seen questions on social cost of carbon, blue carbon, many other terms. Now, carbon dioxide emissions per unit of output or energy. So whatever energy I am producing, okay, in that how much carbon emissions I am doing, that is carbon intensity. Now you still may not be able to connect it. Arisa, what this exactly means? Here the best way to connect it is to see India's NDCs, nationally determined contributions. When I say NDCs, think of India's Paris Agreement. Now these are 5 pledges. This is known as Panchamrit. This India gave in COP 26. But in COP 21, which is the Paris Agreement, in that also India gave 3 NDCs. Okay. So just read this one. There are many of them. What we are talking about is 4. By 2030, India will reduce the carbon intensity of its economy by 45% from previous target of 35. So in 2015, India's target was 35% reduction. Now we have increased our target to 45%. What is the term? Carbon intensity. So this is the practical application. This is the theoretical concept. Concept is carbon dioxide emissions per unit of or output of energy, but related to NDCs. Earlier we said 35% reduction. Now we are saying 45% reduction of carbon intensity. I hope this part is clear. Other than that, of course, we know terms like net zero. Net zero does not mean zero emissions. Net zero means how much you emit versus how much you absorb. If you minus that, that is zero. For India, remember our net zero target is 2070. Okay. US and even countries like EU, European Union, they have 2050. China has 2060. So by 2070, India will have this net zero target. Talking of EU, European Union, EU came up with something known as carbon border adjustment mechanism. And here also one more term came in news, that was carbon leakage. Carbon border adjustment mechanism is known as world's first carbon border tax. World's first carbon border tax. Okay. So keep this in mind. And this in fact was opposed by India. India said this is going to be discriminatory. The developed countries in fact are not fulfilling their responsibilities. Again, this is the term. Every 4 or 5 months you will keep on reading carbon border adjustment mechanism. Even in this year, in 2024, there was a question on the Green Deal of EU. So now even the questions they are asking you in environment are not limited to India. Even EU or US based initiatives they can ask you. Okay. So carbon border adjustment mechanism related to EU. Carbon leakage is, for example, we just saw fugitive emissions. This is the leakage. But in carbon leakage, what will happen? For example, if there is a country A and there is a country B. Country B has to give product to country A. Now country A is saying, I will not take the product from you because your technology is not very good. But what they can do, they can take a product from an even inferior country. Okay, bypassing all these laws, which ultimately means carbon will be leaked. It's just that you're not buying it from country number B. This is what India has said, that if you're not buying from us, you can still buy from some other country which follows your rules and regulations. That ultimately will lead to carbon leakage. Okay. So this is one thing. Now, this also term or particular part is very important, carbon sequestration. Here there are few terms. Blue carbon has been asked by UPSC. Okay. It talks about the oceans and the coastal systems which are sequestering. Sequestering here means storage. The storage by ocean or coastal ecosystem. This is known as blue carbon. Okay. Now with blue carbon, again this year there has been a term, many of us may have read about it, teal carbon. And India's first teal carbon. Yesterday we read about Keoladeo National Park in Rajasthan, Bharatpur. Teal carbon is carbon which is stored. Please note, blue carbon is also the carbon stored. Teal carbon is also the carbon stored. Where? Non-tidal freshwater wetlands. Non-tidal freshwater wetlands. This is your teal carbon. Where this study or has been carried out? Keoladeo in Rajasthan. Okay, so blue carbon we know. There is again marine cloud brightening. What happens here? If you brighten the clouds with certain aerosols, they reflect the sunlight. If they reflect the sunlight, incoming sunlight is reduced, lesser heating of earth will happen. This is the meaning of marine cloud brightening. This also helps in coral restoration. We also just saw about the particular part of the Great Barrier Reef, marine cloud brightening. Okay. Now, we can talk about carbon dioxide removal. I'll just tell you something known as DAC, direct air capture. That was in news in most probably 1 or 2 slides. Algae can also help in carbon capture. This is also happening. In fact, there are again a lot of genetic modifications that can also be done. Okay. In fact, when you read about biofuels, the 4th generation biofuels can also sequester carbon. In addition to them being genetically modified, they can also sequester carbon. Okay. Even algae can capture carbon. Carbon farming. Just remember, EU was in news because of carbon farming. In carbon farming, there are good agricultural environmental practices to reduce the carbon dioxide emitted from agriculture. So carbon farming, again EU. Carbon border adjustment mechanism, again EU. EU's target is 2050 to be net zero. Okay, so please keep this in mind. Teal carbon we have seen. Okay. Another term related to carbon sequestration. This was again published in the Hindu. Deal vertical migration. Okay. Now, this term is related to marine species, specifically zooplanktons. So just note what happens here. Okay. Now, in this what will happen? Simply from top to bottom, from bottom to top, the migration of species will happen. So you have on the top, you will have phytoplanktons who will produce the food, who will capture carbon dioxide. This will be eaten up by zooplanktons. The zooplanktons will then be also taken up. So this deal vertical migration leads to something known as the biological carbon pump. So constant movement up and down of these zooplankton and again marine species ultimately helps in capturing and storage of carbon. So even deal vertical migration can help in carbon sequestration. That is one thing. Done by zooplanktons. Zooplanktons will eat up phytoplanktons. Phytoplanktons take up CO2 and then the whole cycle will keep on happening. So again the biological carbon pump, okay, or the global carbon pump is related to this. Because this stored carbon goes into them, they will be eaten up, and again this whole cycle, the whole up and down movement of these species is deal vertical migration, again related to carbon sequestration. Okay. One thing is then direct air capture. Though this was the most important technology. See, in carbon sequestration you talk about CCS and CCUS, carbon capture and storage, carbon capture utilization and storage. Okay, so this is CCS and one is carbon capture utilization and storage. Now there is a particular technology known as direct air capture. Okay, so Iceland mammoth is doing capture, and this is the world's biggest. Mammoth is the largest CO2 capture and storage facility in the world. So directly they will capture the air will have carbon dioxide. Okay, remember air naturally has 0.03% carbon dioxide. This is naturally present. The problem is the man-made component is increasing. We just saw 426 ppm. All right. So direct air capture is the method. So direct air capture is is it working or is it stopped? People online can just tell. I think अभी just थोड़ा सा कुछ hiccup हुआ है. Is it working, or you can just let me know? Is it fine now? Okay, so we were at direct air capture. So just, okay, fine, okay, great. So just see this, right? So there is this direct air capture going on, talks about Iceland and Iceland mammoth. And this is going to capture the carbon dioxide directly from the air and store it, okay? So just keep this in mind. Okay, now the last couple of terms that I'll just tell you, which will again wrap up the entire topic. Now, in fact, I'll also do in HYTs, we'll also do the COP29, but a term that is throughout every newspaper, every publication is Article 6. Now, there are few terms that you have to remember. See, we are doing carbon market, etc., etc. Article 6 is something you cannot forget at all. One term is Article 6. I'll tell you. One is Article 6. Second term is ITMO. Directly they can ask you, internationally transferred mitigation outcomes are related to. It will be difficult to answer in the exam hall. Now, let us just quickly see what these are. See, global carbon markets, they get a signal in COP29 under Paris Agreement. So first thing is, Article 6 is related to Paris Agreement. Now, Article 6, what does it tell you? Article 6 basically tells you about how the countries are going to, for example, there is Article 6.2, there is Article 6.4, there is Article 6.8. Main thing to remember here, it talks about carbon markets, okay? So in Article 6.2, it will talk about ITMO. For example, India and Japan, they want to share certain carbon credits. This can be done under Article 6.2, for example. 6.4 is under UNFCCC. See, this is a carbon market. Article 6 is basically related to carbon market. How the carbon trading, etc. can happen between countries. If between countries something is to happen, this is Article 6.2. So this will talk about bilateral. This is directly under UNFCCC. So all the countries combined, if they want to do anything, that is under Article 6.4. Article 6.8 is non-market mechanisms. Not related to the market, non-market mechanisms, okay? So here again, just we'll have a look at, so again, what we are talking about, COP29, Paris Agreement, Article 6, 6.2, 6.4, remember this, number 1, okay? Now, one thing you have seen is this NDC I just told you, nationally determined contributions. We also saw Article 6. And there is something known as a global stock take, okay? This Article 6 happened in COP29. This actually happened for the first time in COP28. But global stock take is also mentioned in the Paris Agreement. Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, okay? Global stock take is an exercise that will talk about the accounting, that how are we doing? How are all the countries doing overall? That is the main part. That is related to global stock take. And this is mentioned, this has to be done in almost every 5 years. It was done for the first time in COP28, okay? So COP29 we know happened in Baku, Azerbaijan. This one happened in Dubai, UAE. So just remember this. So every article, this year there were so many articles on Article 6. So Article 6, very simple answer related to carbon market. If they go in more detail, they can ask you 6.2, this is bilateral between countries. 6.4 is under UNFCCC, and 6.8 is non-market mechanisms. Just remember this, okay? And ITMOs, again, they are under Article 6, of Paris Agreement. What they will do, see, this is internationally, you are transferring something, mitigation outcomes. So countries are transferring greenhouse gas emission reductions or removals to other countries. You achieve your goal, I achieve my goal. That is the whole idea here. Okay, I hope we are clear on this. Another term that was overall in news was NCQG. In COP29, two things were very much in news. Article 6, related to Article 6 is ITMO, and one is NCQG. Okay, NCQG is, just remember, it is a fund. Here they are saying triple, that they want to triple, so $300 billion per year to be given. Overall, this fund has a target of $1.3 trillion. And this is a new fund that has been overall spoken about. One of the biggest talk about NCQG happened in COP29. So directly they can also ask you, what is this NCQG? So first of all, it's a fund. Earlier, developed countries had to give $100 billion per year to developed countries. Earlier. But this was not achieved. Now what they are saying, we will create a new fund. This is known as the new collective quantified goal, and we will now have an even bigger target, which is $300 billion per year. So remember, NCQG can also directly be asked. So this is also one thing to keep in mind. Okay, the new collective quantified goal. All right. Now the last two words, I think one is greenwashing, and then again some related terms I'll tell you. Now we have greenwashing. Greenwashing has already been asked once. So what is greenwashing? It is the activities or the misleading claims the companies say. They say that we are very much environmentally sustainable, but it is not so. So these are the false, misleading claims the companies do. Now on this, there has been a lot of update. Number one, government has unveiled a new guideline to rein misleading eco-friendly ads. In this, please remember, the work is being done by this, the Central Consumer Protection Authority. New guidelines have come. Now the guidelines say you cannot use loosely the words like, again, eco-friendly, sustainable, without having a credible, conclusive proof or evidence. Number one. Second, in these guidelines, legal remedies have also been mentioned. Somebody has been misled by greenwashing. So what can be done? Under the Consumer Protection Act, complaint can be done. Issue can be given or reported to CCPA. Again, other complaints can be done. And lastly, one can even approach National Green Tribunal if environmental harm has happened. So main thing to know is greenwashing mein very detailed guidelines have come up to stop greenwashing, because it is again a misleading practice. Number one, this is greenwashing. But there are many other similar terms that we get confused. I'll show you those terms. Blue washing. Okay, ab dekho. If there is any misleading information and the company claims we are environment friendly, that is greenwashing. But if the country say, or if the company says it is going to have a very positive impact on human rights, on the social aspect, social welfare, but it's not so, it is blue washing. So greenwashing is environmental, fake claims on the environmental part, fake claims on human rights, on migration, on social aspect, that is blue washing. So even blue washing is in news. Now, greenwashing we have seen. There is also green hushing. There is also green wishing. Again, these are terms that keep on appearing. Into ESG. ESG means environmental, social, and these governance norms. In India, the ESG now norms or this ESG rating is being done by SEBI. So SEBI has again given some accreditation to certain, let's say particular accreditors which can give the ESG rating norms. Now please note a couple of things. Green washing and blue washing, you know. Green hushing is simply the company is saying we don't want to publicize the ESG information, because they know if they publicize it, they may get a lot of criticism. That is green hushing. Okay, you know, hush money or something that you are hiding from. So this is company's refusal to publicize ESG, environmental, social, all this governance information, because this will lead to more scrutiny. This is green hushing. Green wishing, we have sometimes wishful thinking. We don't have the capacity, but we'll set very ambitious goals sometimes. Green wishing is similar to that. Here, unintentional, this is actually unintentional greenwashing. The company does not have the capacity, but they will make they want have very ambitious targets, but they cannot achieve it because they don't have the capacity. Okay, so a practice where the company hopes to meet certain norms, commitments, but does not have the wherewithal, it does not have the capacity to do so. This is known as this particular part of green wishing. Okay, so that is there. And lastly, again, I just told you ESG related, environmental, social, governance norms, that SEBI has added particular metrics under BRSR, okay, which is business responsibility and sustainability reporting. So now SEBI is very active. And why are we discussing SEBI? Again, please remember, companies have to talk about, disclose these norms. And based on this, companies can also get public attraction, public can also put funds, it can be public listed company, investors can put in money. Hence, the role now of SEBI is important here. Okay, that ESG rating providers, and they are certified by SEBI. So SEBI will say these particular groups can certify or can give ratings of ESG. In this thing, only remember this, one thing is SEBI, and second is business responsibility and sustainability reporting. See, you would have heard about CSR, corporate social responsibility. Another term that is BRSR, business responsibility and sustainability reporting. Okay, so again, I think that is one thing that we can know. Okay, till here, I just want to know how many of you have been able to follow. Okay, so these are all the major terms. We end on this part here. I think we've covered a lot of topics and a lot of related terms today. So just mention this in the comment that how many of you have been able to follow till here. If now there is any doubt that you wanted to ask, perhaps you can just mention and let me know. Acha, theek hai. I think there's one last term. This is greenium. This is the last term for the class. Again, related to this only. So greenium is, see, you know terms like premium. On any bond, we can have a premium. This is greenium. So green bonds are there. Bonds are debt instruments. Green bonds mean you want a debt instrument for an environment related project. So there's a greenium here. So here what is happening, even if the investors, okay, so they will, maybe they get a lower yield. They're even accepting lower yields. Why? Because these bonds have a sustainability motive. These bonds have different ambitions. So this is a greenium that the investors are willing to accept even lower yields on these debt instruments. Okay. See, BioRock, you can just read it about more, Sri Lakshmi. It is again a structure, artificial structure that is created through that electricity is passed. We want to then concentrate all these calcium carbonate particles in a BioRock. Okay. Till here, I hope you are able to follow other people. You're right, Kundan. Yes, it is evergreen. That is evergreen. But red sanders we had discussed, that was deciduous. Okay? So this is also one I think you have made. Please make very good notes out of this. We've discussed a lot of topics, concepts. Something or the other may get repeated. Okay, so please, very short notes you have to make. Handwritten notes are always the best. Okay. The third topic now that we'll do in HYT is something that you have been waiting for. The Indian State of Forest Report 2023. Okay. And again, in all these lectures, then I'll also come to Species in News lecture number 2. So that will also give you a very good coverage. Okay. So I think we have had, again, a lot of you attend this live. So again, I hope aap sabki padhai and you guys are preparing well. This is again the last moment push from also our side and also your side to make in the best possible efforts, consolidate karte rahenge. Whatever doubts you are there, whenever you come to live, or even after, let's say you watch it later, okay, you watch it at 1.5x, 2x, just drop a comment, ki this is the doubt, okay? So whatever doubts you are there, I'll also reply to that, okay? So thank you so much, I think, for all of you for attending. We'll meet now in the next session. That will be on Indian State of Forest Report 2023, okay? All the very best. All the best for your studies. Keep on preparing well. Thank you.